I'm Bob Desnek. I'm a geneticist and a pediatrician. I got into pediatrics and genetics because years ago all the action was in birth defects and so forth. But my PhD thesis focused on a very rare disease called Fabry disease. I was interested in it because in those days we didn't understand the metabolic defect. We understood what substrates were accumulating and we could measure those. That was glycolipid biochemistry. But we had no clue how in this X-linked disease, how to identify the pretty much asymptomatic women who had a 1 in 2 chance of having an affected male child. And that became my PhD thesis, and subsequently it became my life's work, and that has branched off into a number of other areas. And what I'd like to say is I've learned a lot of lessons that I think apply to people, young people today who want to do academic research or either basic or translational and be able to accomplish something fundamentally important: do good for patients. And that's the bottom line. And if you do that, your career will be a success no matter how frustrating the lab work is, no matter how difficult you find getting grants, no matter how rewarding you find working with patients. It is the bottom line that you will succeed if you focus on a particular problem. Now, how to go about it? Well, first of all, I learned very quickly that you had to go to medical school. You can't just get a PhD. Or if you're doing a PhD, you need to take courses in medical school. That's where human biology is taught, nowhere else. And to learn the pathophysiology and the physiology of disease. And maybe we should do that at Mount Sinai. I don't know if we do, but we should offer that. When I was at another institution, I had all my graduate students taking certain courses in the medical school. They just had to audit it, but it so impressed them with understanding of the biology and pathophysiology of organ systems that it prepared them for work in, the diseases that they're interested in. And also it brought them a perspective from the patient's point of view and from the pathophysiology point of view about a disease. It wasn't just laboratory research. It gave them a better orientation to what they were doing. So that's one thing that I think an important lesson learned. Now, I embarked on this particular disease and I got into being able to diagnose these women who were asymptomatic heterozygotes simply by measuring their glycolipids. I learned glycolipid biochemistry. That was my PhD. But then along came the changes in science. And when you think about where we are today, 40 years from when I started, we've got such a revolution going on in terms of what we know in technology and biology. We can do all kinds of things that in those days we had to take a risk to do. I learned enzymology. When DNA came available in the 80s, I learned how to clone cDNAs and sequence genes. When transgenic technology came along, we learned how to make mice. Now we're doing gene editing and gene transfer. We've done some stem cell biology. All these things now are part of the toolkit. Research and the ability to do it has never been better. In my career, I've watched that all evolve over 40 years. Now you can order it up. So that's really the framework of what you can do. Now I picked Fabry's. I became very knowledgeable. I saw a lot of patients, hundreds of patients, hundreds of families. And I really understood the disease like most other physicians couldn't. We were able to identify subtypes. We were able to help those patients understand what the issues were, how to manage their kids, etc. That's all the fun part of it. The research was, cloning the gene, learning how to express it, learning how to make the mouse model, being able to do the preclinical studies. That is what happens with superb postdocs and graduate students. They made that happen in my lab. And together, we were able to go forward and license a technique that brought patients to treatment. And that was the first treatment, which was enzyme replacement therapy. Without going through the history, let me tell you that that drug was approved in 2001. We licensed it to Sanofi Genzyme. Mount Sinai is still collecting royalties on that. That's the way you put your kid through college. The other point is that I started a company. I learned about chaperones on a trip to Japan. I recruited one of the guys to the department because I was chair, and we started a company called Amicus Therapeutics. And last week, the drug that was recently approved in Europe was approved in the US. So pharmacologic chaperones therapy, we were instrumental in that. We've also done RNAi. We have phase 3 studies going with Alnylam. Partnering with companies is terrific. Starting companies, I spent 2 years of my life running that company, and I can tell you that you're better off if you're a good scientist doing science than trying to be an MBA CEO. So those are important lessons that you can learn. Having a big pharma or even biotech company running the show, they're expert in that. You do the work in the lab, they'll translate it into a treatment, and they'll market it for you. You'll benefit. Now, in my department, we created a dynasty. We had the bug for innovation. And innovation is what it's all about. And if you have the bug for innovation, you won't mind the frustration in the lab. You'll be able to pick up and do things that you thought you couldn't do. You'll take risks and learn new technologies. You'll move things along. What's the dynasty? Well, Ed Schuckman. Ed may be in this list of people that are going to talk to you, but he's developed a treatment for Niemann-Pick with A and B with me, and Farber disease with his wife Lila, and they have started a company called Plexera, and Yanis Ioannou has started a company with Sanofi Ventures. You know, these people have been involved with me, have the innovation bug, and have taken it to fruition. You can learn it. It's something that you just want to do to make your life fulfilling, because all you have to do is develop a new diagnostic, develop a new treatment, hopefully a cure down the road, and you will feel so gratified every day you go to work. You'll say, rare diseases, they're low-hanging fruit, but they're doable.